Welcome to the Line of Departure, where we amplify veteran voices by getting real, going unfiltered, and digging deep through storytelling, exploring the lives and experiences of successful veterans in business and the unpolished and often hard lessons they learned along the way. Join us as we bring alive the amazing stories about life and all the messiness and imperfection that comes with it through the eyes of veterans who have persevered and gone on to have successful second careers after service. I'm your host, Eric Templeton, a Marine veteran, and joining me for today's conversation is Navy SEAL veteran Ben Davis. Ben and I cover a lot of ground in this inaugural episode. We discuss growing up, becoming a Navy SEAL, 10 years of active duty, and multiple combat deployments, transition experience from the military into technology, Ben's post-career transition life and success factors, advice to veterans and organizations employing veterans, and finally, Ben goes deep on his work in veteran advocacy as we round out the conversation talking about mental health, the veteran psyche, sense of purpose, and self-identity. Can you just start off, tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been at Cisco for 2.5 years, and I am a cloud specialist. So I work, if you think about under the umbrella of all security, which is under the umbrella of all Cisco, I'm focused on just a couple products within mostly cloud security. So Umbrella, Cloud Lock, Secure Connect, and Cisco Secure Access. And yeah, I work in the public sector. So basically all of the West except for California, give or take, and public sector accounts. So everything government that is not the DoD or the federal agencies. So think schools, city, county governments, police, court systems, anything that's not federal, basically government, colleges. Yeah. And before that, I was in the Navy for just shy of 10 years. So from 2010 to 2020, I served, I was a SEAL, spent almost 100% of that time in Virginia Beach, but other than training. So I grew up in Virginia, went to the University of Tennessee, enlisted in the Navy. And yeah, I was in Virginia Beach for 10 years. And at this time, the war in Afghanistan, Iraq was really starting to transition into the use of special forces and special operations type people. The war was 6-7 years old, and I think people were kind of getting tired of it, and they were like, let's use these guys. That strategy was kind of coming about. So anyway, they were like, man, you can do this. You can become a SEAL and you don't even have to go to the Naval Academy. Basically, it doesn't matter. And you can do what we're doing. And so, yeah, I didn't really have any other plan. I wasn't really interested in anything that my University of Tennessee colleagues were going to do. I was like, what are you going to do after this? And so, yeah, one thing led to another, and off I went. I just left and enlisted in the Navy. And
the rest is
dude, it's the next 10 years, like it just went boom. Like 10 years just went by, and then all of a sudden I was married and expecting a child, and I'd done 3 deployments in a row. And it was time to re-enlist, and that takes us up to where we
kind of started there,
yeah. And decided to get out. And I got an MBA while my last couple of years in the Navy, so I got a finance job at this private equity boutique private equity real estate shop here in Denver when I first got out. And it was okay, it was all right, but it was sort of not, I really hadn't networked to the extent that I was going to. And so I continued to network and found tech and some other SEALs that, some of the opinions they shared about what it was like to work at Cisco and, sort of a big tech at large in security, pretty interesting, and gave it a go. And I've been here ever since.
Commentary on this term that we always hear called, the transition. You've heard it. It's on social media. It's on LinkedIn. But, for you, what does that term mean, the transition?
Yeah, it's changed a lot for me in the last 16 months, maybe last 12 months. For me, um, when I realized I wanted to get out, I overweighted, a lot of parts of life that I thought would be um, critical, or I thought of some things as the most critical, like who's going to write me, who's going to pay me to work, where am I going to live, and what am how am I going to provide for my family? All very important questions. And I spent almost zero time thinking about being only 32, I guess was 32, yeah. And having another, 50 plus years of life, but professionally another 30 years, and um, how I wanted to make use of that time, what I wanted to accomplish, what I was interested in, what I was curious about, what would I want it all to equate to, I think is something I think about now that I didn't when I was getting out. It was just
What
very
does it all mean,
vocational.
right?
Yeah, that's right. Like, what does the sum of my working years amount to? And yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's the pace of pay, the stability of military compensation that I think guys and girls get super caught around, like, yeah, well, when I get out, that the money will stop, and so I better just find something to fill that hole. And what I found was that I was able to fill that hole, um, and that was fine for about a year, and then a lot of other questions started to come up around that weren't transitioned yet. Like in still sort of identifying as a military member, or not identifying as a military member anymore, but not really having an answer for what I did identify as. Um, and so for me, transition, I think is comprehensive of all those things. I mean, I think even if you do
Hmm.
20 years, I mean, a very small percentage of military members go from day one until their last day of work, even if that's in their 60s. It's rare that you see people get out and their just plan is to play golf for the rest of their life or whatever they're going to do. So for us, I don't know how old you are, but I assume you're around my age. I mean, there's a lot of professional years afterward.
A lot of
And for
runway
those,
left.
what's that?
A lot of runway left, as our pilot friends
Yeah,
they
that's
say.
right. That's right. And yeah, especially, you do something in the military that's like, generally speaking, um, virtuous, or most of us would agree with that. I guess maybe not all of us, but you kind of take that for granted, when you get out.
Yeah.
Is like there's not a you could probably count on one hand the amount of civilian jobs that are going to be as virtuous as like some of the stuff we did in the military. Maybe virtuous isn't the right word there, but you're not going to get, you got firefighter, some other things where you're going to get home at night and think I did a good thing for society. A lot of careers is, obviously there's a lot of good for society, but it's sort of over the long term.
It
And
can
so,
kind of seem like a trade-off, at times.
yeah,
You
right,
really
right.
feel like you're giving something up, in terms of what you're gaining. And I think a lot of service members probably struggle with that very feeling. And how do they kind of justify that
Hmm.
career 2.0, and
Yeah.
you and I talk a lot about, especially probably in that 1 year, right? Because for you, you transitioned and then you transitioned again.
And I think if you have a Venn diagram of your life in the military, that work bubble is enormous, and it's going to overlap a lot of. it's made its way pretty far into the marriage bubble, into the fatherhood bubble, into the identity bubble, into the all of these parts that make up your diagram. And then when you get out, it doesn't have to be that way, And I think if
Right.
you, work can be a utility for the other things that are in your life, or it could be just as big, But that's up to you, and that's sort of a privilege of getting out, I think. And if you don't recognize that, and you're looking for a job that's going to, you know, fulfill you in all these different areas of life, you might be disappointed. Or conversely, if you want a job that leaves you alone and you're like, dude, I just want to shovel snow and someone pay me or
Exactly.
whatever.
That's such a good point. It's that privilege, and I think that there is a trade off, and I do probably believe that finding that same sense of purpose, you probably won't find it, right? In many places, there are probably some jobs out there, some career fields that get you close, but I have a feeling that the more and more veterans we talk to who have gone through this process and gone through this roller coaster themselves will probably say, that it's one of those things that you may not never ever find again, but you figure out how to be okay with that. And then you
Hmm.
figure out how to overcome and find other ways because you probably have a little bit more time now to, and we will get to some things, some awesome work you're doing, but you may have some time to expand some of those Venn diagram bubbles where you may have
Yeah,
only
exactly.
had literally the time to have, hey, I'm a Navy SEAL and I'm a dad, right? And anything outside of that, I just don't have the bandwidth. But maybe now on this side, we do have a little bit more time to invest in ourselves in some other areas. So
Yeah, I think it's all just about perspective and like not getting caught off guard, or like having a bad understanding of it all. I think that's where people really, you see them in pain or in struggling, is when they're
yeah,
like, man, I thought this job was going to provide me this, or I thought this, sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes I think veterans get in jobs and it's like, this is way too stressful. The reason I got out is because I wanted to spend time with my family, and I wanted to travel, and I wanted to not work so hard. And then it's way too much for them. So, it's not either or anything. It's just about perspective, I think, and having like, being able to sort of foresee um, a new existence or a new reality that's not, it's not fair for the private sector either to try to provide, what, especially, fighting in the war in Afghanistan or Iraq is gonna, that experience. There's no one's ever going to be that invested in any for-profit firm, and the firm's not going to provide that much of an experience for its employees. It's two totally different things.
that's really where you and I and doing the work like this, where we really can make an impact here. And
Hmm.
just hearing your talk is really amazing to me because I kind of think about those inflection points in your life, and you think about it like that, an inflection point or a pivot, comes to mind. And right now there are some great organizations and resources out there that you and I both used during, what I would probably say a life-changing, transformative event that has a deep impact on you. But there are also some, noise out there, a lot of noise, I would say.
Yeah, there is a lot of noise. There is a ton of yeah, I'm sympathetic to, I try to put myself in someone's shoes that's like getting out tomorrow, and it does seem like he'd be sort of overwhelmed and inundated with like offers for assistance, and it would be like hard to even navigate. Um, one thing that comes to mind, when I got out, I had a friend and a mentor who'd been out for maybe like 4 or 5 years, and he set up all these calls for me to talk to people, and I didn't really get the premise of it, like, because I would say, well, is this guy hiring? Um, and my buddy would be like, no, just meet this guy.
Learn, be open, right?
Exactly. And now I kind of get it. And that would be sort of my advice. like now I see the value in that because you just collect little, you collect experiences and other people's mistakes, and they all sort of compound into figuring it out where you want to go and what you want to do and how you want to do it. Which is it's like indicative of how job focused I was at that time. I thought like, what do you want me to talk about with this guy? I mean, I don't even know.
Hey,
But no, I
with
totally get
that,
it. And that would be my advice is
yeah.
like just talk to as many people as you can and learn from them, learn from their experience. Um, I think the whole veteran transition help space is tough because there are a lot of
Yeah.
there is quality out there, definitely, and there's people that are getting from A to B seemingly successfully. At the same time, I'm on LinkedIn too, and I see it all every day. It's just like, man, if you were a veteran now, how do you even decide who to um, let help you?
Knowing where to
It's,
start. Yeah, and
yeah,
I
exactly.
think we'll get into that a little bit. We'll tease out a little bit of a conversation here in a few minutes, but I think you nailed it. I mean, in that transition space, there is just there's a lot. I mean, there's a ton good stuff out there. Great people, great companies, and that navigation is really hard. And where do we start? And then moving kind of on to where you and I find ourselves, when we talk to veterans now in that post transition experience. So if you rewind and your mentor setting up those calls, now you're one of those people,
Hmm.
that are talking with folks who are going through what you have already gone through.
Hmm.
And where I think you and I will probably, focused on the majority of our conversations moving forward. And what happens to a veteran after this transition period, called the transition, say 3 years down the road, 5 years, 10 years down the road, other than firsthand and anecdotal conversations, there seems to be an unequal balance of what's out there, for veterans to look at. And so, what do you see, as being on this side of it now in that post transition experience, and then impacting, those coming behind you?
Yeah. So I've last fall I started thinking about this. And so I started a like an article thing on Substack, and it's basically without explicitly stating, addressing this topic is sort of I wanted to make some place to host thoughts on transition, but not um, from your EAOS to month 6 transition, month 18 to 10 years. And you're right. There is, I think if you tallied up all of the assistance entities that exist, I mean, I'd probably 95% of them are focused on helping you get from in the military to landing that first role. I would say, once you've been out for a while, you, you need to, or you should have become privy to the generosity and sort of the humility that the veteran community has, and that you should be seeking mentors. You should be curious about, if you've been out 5 years, those have been out 10 years, and so on. And so I would expect, I guess, and I'm kind of thinking through this as we talk, but I would expect that you have a little bit more ability to help yourself, but it does take a lot of effort. Um, However, I find that the willingness of people older than I am to give me advice or talk with me didn't end at 6 months out. I mean,
Hmm.
it's
It kind
still
of
growing.
grows, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think, maybe the assistance isn't going to come from the Honor Foundation or from some transition assistance program, but it's definitely out there. Um, but I think the veteran has to be a little bit more motivated Um,
Absolutely. Well,
and so
it happens like this,
yeah, exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I mean, and kind of gets us to, as you and I were brainstorming what that looks like, and kind of gets us to the purpose of just these conversations, and that we believe we can really kind of help uncover some of these fundamental and underlying issues in this post-transition veteran experience just by having these real,
Hmm.
unfiltered, and sometimes difficult, because we almost want to uncover those difficulties that someone has experienced years ahead of me that I can learn from those experiences. That there could be an impact here. What do you say about, having just kind of these storytelling sessions with successful vets, in these spaces who can kind of share, through storytelling some of their experience.
Yeah, I think there's no better way to do it. Like I just sort of uncovered as we were talking. It's a lot as you progress out of the military. I think it becomes much more conversational.
Right.
Like, when I got out, I needed someone to look at my resume and tell me like if that's good or not. Like is this how people do it out here? And I don't need that anymore. Not, I mean, I'm sure my resume could use some help from someone, but I don't need, what I need is to hear from someone who is closer to where I want to be 10 years from now and hear how they got there. How do they get, looks like you're at point D. How did you even get from A to B? And then when did you go from B to C? So yeah, I think this series is going to be great. I think it's a way to address what we just identified, which is that sort of an abundance of, hey, give me your hand and I'll help you jump over
Yeah.
the separation river. But once you get on this side, you can figure it out. And that's not definitely not the case. I mean, I don't know how to get where I want to be when I'm 50.
That's right. Military culture, you are, it is a meritocracy in a
Hmm.
large, I'd say more so than it is in the world we live in now, where you get a fit rep. You have an immediate supervisor who counsels you on your job description, and you understand your fit on your team and what you're responsible for,
Hmm.
and you're evaluated on that. And that's
Hmm.
a double-edged sword, right? Because it's a baptism by fire. You kind of sink or swim, in that environment. But for those of us and you who have been successful doing that, and coming into an organization or a place where you don't necessarily have that, and you're not only judged on the value of the quality of your work, and what you do, but more so on this side of the equation, a lot of it is the people that you develop relationships with.
Hmm.
And that's not that is not important in our previous, roles and jobs in the military. But I would say to an nth degree here, in a certain order of magnitude, is that relationship development is really one of the keys here that I
Hmm.
think we'll uncover as we start this series. And kind of that, you mentioned the quality of your work. I mean, we were talking about that. That's kind of what, is the baseline. It gets you into the door, it gets you into those conversations, but it's what you do with it, beyond that,
Hmm.
because you have to be able to have those, intelligent conversations and maintain that. But you also have to be really good and adept at building relationships and the right relationships at the right time.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that's something that we'll see in 6 months, right? As we talk to people,
Yeah.
I'll make a note and say, yeah, hey, it's not all who you know, right? We know that, but
Yeah.
I have a lot of I'll throw a guess out there, and you can hold me accountable to this. That a lot of people will say that they had someone help them along the way,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
So
Oh
we'll see,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, if I could give someone starting out in tech, or in cybersecurity tomorrow, like any advice, a veteran, is you need to find someone who's going to tell you if you're not doing a good job and tell you when
That's
you
right.
are. And I don't know how you're going to make this person's time worth it, but figure it out because no one, at large, people aren't going to do that.
It's a
There's
two-way street,
another,
right? You know?
yeah, there's another
Yeah.
SEAL on our team, and we came on roughly at the same time. And I mean, we've had a lot of like, am I good at this? Like conversations or like, was that bad or good? Or is anyone going to tell me? Or you're right, because the military all the way up through all the ranks, there's very feedback is like very uh it's abundant and it's sort of in your face.
Sometimes it hurts, by the way. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
that's
they're
right.
less. I think they're speaking about the two-way street. I think there's a lot of, you know, I think you and I are going to talk a lot about how, we as veterans in our experience in, to the corporate world on this side. But I think we'll uncover some of these truths of, these are
Hmm.
some great tools that
Hmm.
Benjamin Davis, that Eric Templeton can then go use,
Hmm.
in our lives, and this idea of feedback, constant,
Hmm.
and kind of unsolicited feedback, this culture of accountability of, I think I heard someone say it of you debrief the minute details. It's an own up, fess up culture. It's like, hey, Ben, like, I know you don't know this, but I almost messed this part up when we were on a customer visit. But I just wanted
Hmm.
to let you know because of the implications and the ripple effect that that
Hmm.
could have had, and then how we can fix it together. And I think that's
Hmm.
just something that probably is ingrained, in
Hmm.
us. But when we see it not happening, then it's kind of
Hmm.
strange and unfamiliar when we don't see that. So, you know, in a humble way, you kind of find where you can plug in pieces of value. And it may not be all at once. Nobody likes someone that comes in and says, "Hey, this is the way we did it. We
Yeah,
should all do it like this." I mean, that's kind of not exactly what we want to be, but we also don't want to just shirk off who we are.
yeah,
And so there's
right.
some very tangible things that I think we'll see too. They go both ways.
Yeah, I think one thing I sort of had to get over when I started here was like, well, maybe not get over, but like I found myself thinking that people were more concerned about me than they are really, which is sort of like a narcissistic viewpoint now that I say it out loud. But I would just like be on calls and think like, oh man, everyone on this call is probably thinking about how lacking my understanding of this topic is, or I was under the impression that other people were under the impression that I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't know what I was doing. Um,
Hey, there it
but
is. There,
now,
now
yeah,
we're
but
getting now we're
now
getting to the truths.
that's right. But now that I've sort of observed, it's
None of us
like,
know what we're doing, by the way.
yeah, and people aren't as worried about you as you think, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Oh,
just
that's
me,
so
but
good. What are we
yeah,
at?
so like
We're
people
like
aren't,
minute 35, and we're starting to get good here. That's
yeah,
it.
yeah, people aren't so sitting around thinking like, man, I wish Ben's presentation skills would get 10% better. They don't really care.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know what that says about me, but or what it says about the SEAL teams and that just everything is debriefed, everything is sort of analyzed and
Everything.
like but in veteran transition, I think you're safe to say that like everyone's experience is extremely unique. But professionally, I don't think it's that unique. Like if you're having this situation at work, there's someone in the community that has either had that experience or that something really similar, and they can offer
Hmm.
you some guidance.
Exactly.
Um, which is another thing I didn't really figure out until maybe a year ago. It's like,
Yeah. Well, that's a
dude,
great point
hundreds.
too, in figuring out, we're not two dudes sitting here talking to each other about how we figured it out.
Yeah,
It should never be kind of under the illusion that, this is an advice session with Ben and Eric, and let me tell you how we figured it out. It's just we're sitting here trying to connect the dots, and
yeah,
because
that's
there
right.
is someone out there and we
Yeah,
can talk to them, and then we
totally.
can we can figure out, what are some of those things that they went through. And like you said, there are a lot of similarities between what all of us go through. And so
Totally.
let's start connecting the dots there. Let's start there.
Mhm. One thing that I've realized about my own transition that I would maybe advise someone against is I look back at that time and I was considering getting out of the military. My wife was pregnant. Um, and I sort of had a running from attitude and
Mm-hmm.
not really a running to attitude. So it was more like I have to sever from this
Mm.
lifestyle.
Clean break.
Yep. And where I'll end up was sort of secondary. And if that's where you find yourself in the military, I think you should respect that and do it
Mm-hmm.
regardless. But I think having equal parts, why am I leaving and where am I going, or a big where am I going is going to make things really um, more, the answers are going to present themselves a lot faster. And that can start by thinking about what you want to do after the military, early, 3 years before you get out, 5 years. I mean, anytime, 10 years. Um, you don't want to find yourself in like, man, I gotta go. And like, I'll just jump and like build the plane in the sky. Which isn't totally what I did, but it was sort of rooted in that. And, one thing I did right was I think I thought about the life that I wanted to have.
Mm.
And I thought about
That's good.
yeah, I thought about what's the weekend look like? Where do I live? How much, um, I pictured myself in my house and I was like, how much does that house cost? Okay. How much money does someone make that lives in that house? What kind of cars what do you care about? I think I did pretty well there. Like I was like, okay, this is sort of where I want to see myself and this is what you'd have to do. Um, where I struggled, I think, and what cost me that year and a half in that private equity job was I didn't invest a ton of time in I want the second chapter of my life's work to be in whatever whatever people are into. It was just sort of like, man, I got to get a job and I got to get paid and
It
um
was almost like a means to an end, the way
uh-huh,
you
uh-huh. It
approached
was
it.
like yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like there were probably some weeks that year I was getting out where someone was like, "Hey man, I got this job for you. It pays this great salary, but what you do is pack envelopes." You know, it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I would have been like, "Sounds good, man. If you're
Yeah,
gonna pay me that much money, like I'll
sounds
do
good.
it."
I'm there.
And like that's not sustainable at all. Like you're not.
What does
You're
that do to you up here?
Yeah,
You
you're in
know?
your 30s. I mean, you don't want your professional life and I mean, you could still do a ton. I mean, you can do anything. So, um, yeah, those are a couple of things like kind of reviewing my own story would be like, think about what you want to run to, not just what you're running from. Think about what life looks like 3 years down the road. It's a Saturday morning. You wake up in your house, how many kids do you have? What town are we in? Iowa? Are we in Alaska? Are we in LA? I mean, where is this place that you want to get to? How rich is this person? Do you need to make a $500,000 a year to afford this life, or do you not care? Don't
Hmm.
go get a job that makes $500,000 a year if what makes you happy is um, living in a Sprinter van. You don't need to make that much money. Um, just sort of look a couple years out and then backtrack and think, how do I get there? Or it doesn't even have to be
Yeah.
lifestyle. It could be like I want to create a company and sell it. Yeah, I've always wanted to um whatever, something in the sciences. Like I'm so passionate about climate change or I'm so passionate about healthcare or something, whatever. But don't do what I did and just think like if anyone will pay me money, I'll do it. Because are themselves to nail it, like job one out of the military. And I mean, if you, I don't know the numbers, but I'm sure if you were able to compile some data, I mean, it's not that likely that the first job you get out of the military, you're going to have 8 years later. And so don't,
Yeah.
um, of course, you're going to worry about it. Of course, you're going to worry about picking the right job, but don't let it be all consuming. I mean,
Mhm.
especially, Cisco's an amazing place to come in and work with adjacent teams and people from finance and different product verticals and marketing. And I mean, it's incredible how many different teams that are all focused on the same end state are. And you might get to year two and be like, man, that's the team for me over there. And Cisco is a place that will be hospitable to that kind of mentality. I mean, there's not really any, from what I've seen, any sort of kickback from seeing somewhere else you think you'll be more successful or more happy, and
Yeah.
going for that. And that can be at smaller firms too.
I
You
believe
know.
that's true, and what I've seen too is just a phenomenal openness here, and then in other places as well, in the ability to kind of reach out and reach up sometimes
Mhm.
into what is the next 3 years, what is this second or third rotation. Here for me,
Mhm.
as I think about a 20-year, what does a 20-year career look like on top of my existing 10 to 12, and so the access has been tremendous, and I think that this conversation carries forward. We just get better at it, and
Yeah.
you get better at it through practice. And to do that, we always just have to continue to push ourselves to be uncomfortable, because the only way we learn is by immersing ourselves in it. And so, we're just having those deep conversations one at a time, and I think we're in a great place that allows us to do that. And I would encourage anybody listening who's on the other side of this transition, looking in, wherever you go, don't just think about, like what you said, Ben, that first job, but think about the second, third, 10
Mhm.
years down the road, and your access to the people and resources that you'll need, to get it there. You don't have to have all the answers figured out, but to know that there is a community behind you and available to you, I think that's been a tremendous benefit for specifically where we work.
Oh, me too, man. You got I mean, there's probably 100 veterans that transitioned the year I did. Um, all at the 2.5 year mark now. I know Missile just hit its 100th hire.
For those who may not be familiar with MISSIL, what Ben said, that stands for Cisco's Military and Sales and Leadership uh, program, which is largely a recruiting program that takes transitioning members and then really hooks them up, with mentorship, with resources, with training, here at Cisco during their last 6 months as they exit the service. And Ben, I think you just mentioned they just hit their 101st hire, which is a huge
Mhm.
milestone for the company. I mean, I think
Yeah.
just the business impact.
Yeah, it's awesome. And those alumni have each other, and you know, like we said, extremely similar experiences. So it's helpful.
That you're here where you are at a company like Cisco, both in mentorship for you personally, and then how you're also giving it here, at the company we mentioned Missile. What are some of
Hmm.
your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think the popularity of this like get a mentor thing I see a lot more in recently, and I'm glad to see that. I mean, I think a lot of veteran access is driven by mentorship, and it's absolutely critical and all this. But the idea of like procuring a mentor, I think, is a little bit um, or actively procuring a mentor, I think can be a little bit like
It seems
sets the
almost
stage.
transactional, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. I think you need to find someone who you identify as possessing knowledge that you want, And it has to be a two-way street. I mean, you have to figure out, or you have to be you have to get some clues that, okay, this guy's doesn't seem like he's in pain for helping me. He's, I'm able to provide something, and he's able, whether, even if it's 90-10, that's fine. But, um, Elon Musk is not going to mentor me because it's not natural. We don't
Yeah.
have, it's not a two-way street. We don't have common projects. Does he have information that I want? Of course. Do I have information he wants? Not really. And so I would encourage people to just invest in relationships first, and then move towards shifting those into mentorship, or confessing to these people that, man, I'd love to hear how you did this or that.
But there's
Right.
such a emphasis on it now where it's like, oh, I have to go out and I have to find, one, two, three, four, whatever mentors. But really, did you start, developing just a basic relationship as a human being with that person or that
Mhm.
individual, before that point? And I think, one of the great points that you bring up there is that this idea of mentorship isn't just an exercise in finding someone who can help you, but it really is just a natural progression of constantly developing relationships,
Mhm.
and no matter where you are, and doing your best to be a good human being,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, you want to be someone who people want
Yeah.
to invest in.
Yeah.
And there tangible things that I think we can all do, if we really take the patience to survey what's out there, and just meet people and develop good relationships with them along the way.
And then I think, for me personally, like, it's so apparently obvious that I would be not where I am today if it weren't for the help of other veterans. And so I just have to be really hard pressed, or have a really good reason why I can't, meet with someone, or help someone or whatever, because there's really not any novel, um, there's no intellectual property to this. It's all just learning as you go and then passing it down. Um, and I think, yeah, I mean, personally, I just feel like I owe it to anyone who needs help, because I've really doubled down on the mentorship.
And this is something that's super cool, right? Because you actually, in all this experience, you founded a nonprofit, and are currently running something, right?
I'm the director now, but I didn't
Okay, not a
start it.
founder. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, two other SEALs started, and I came in about a year later.
okay.
Yeah, so the Veterans Outdoor Advocacy Group, Vogue, is a C3, 501(c)(3), and a C4. So think
Not the
nonprofit, and
magazine.
not VOGUE, which is a very common uh, mis misconception. People come to us to buy it for style and design advice all the time. Um,
VOAG for our listeners.
VOHG,
Yeah.
yep. So, in 2017, there was a bill introduced to get outdoor recreation therapy added to the list of approved treatments through the VA. So think about a veteran is, seeing a care provider at the VA, and in addition to pharmaceuticals or whatever else is at their disposal, would be funding and access to outdoor recreation, so they could go fly fishing or hunting or skiing or camping or whatever they want. And so this organization was founded to drive that legislation, and then sort of on the side do some trips, and deliver outdoor recreation therapy as sort of a research improving secondary effort. The legislation passed in 2020. It's now in a 24-month task force, which is evaluating the efficacy of outdoor recreation therapy for mental health. And we've since attached ourselves to some other legislation that's sort of adjacent to that. And yeah, it's all about broadening the scope of um, treatment implementations that the VA has at their disposal to help veterans, and getting that to be a little bit more diverse than it was 5 years ago. And yeah, it's been an absolute privilege, and it's been amazing. I mean, it's probably as much it's just therapeutic for myself as it has been for the vets that we've tried
I'm sure.
to help. So yeah, stay tuned. It's voag.org, and hopefully within the next year you'll start to see the first, they won't be called prescriptions, but more or less, approval for patients to participate in outdoor recreation type stuff.
Man, that is just that's cool, man. Well,
Thank you.
so I'm thinking about it, and so folks who are hearing this, right? And so you're, attached to legislation. What can we do to support what you're doing? I mean, is it pick up the phone, call your congressman, call your representative? Is it financial support? What's the need right now for you guys?
Yeah, financial support is a big help. I mean, as far as legislation goes, I mean, we're sitting in a good spot. I mean, this was in the Compact Act, which had a lot of veteran legislation in 2020, but it's passed. It's just sort of in a purgatory setting where if the VA could basically recommend that it's not worth the money, and they wouldn't fund it in the next round. So if you wanted to help, I think the best thing you could do is communicate and reach out to the people you served with, or people that that served, and ask them if they've ever considered participating, and then get involved with one of the hundreds, if not 1,000, nonprofits that deliver the therapy and the trips. And yeah, just start to, as a community, we need to just I don't want to say normalize, but we need to make it as people as aware, and provide access in the way that you and I know it's not going to be difficult at all if you wanted SSRIs or any kind of pharmaceuticals for your mental health. Is pretty abundant. And I think a world where people saw yoga and art therapy and outdoor therapy and all these different kinds of things that we know are viable, the better. I mean, that's when we start to see some real change in the veteran mental health space.
No doubt. No doubt. And you have a website?
Yeah, voag.org,
Awesome.
vogue.org.
Awesome. I'll figure out a way to put it in
Yeah,
the
for sure.
video description or something like that, and we'll put it in there. And
Sweet.
you also mentioned, we'll close it out here. You're a writer as well, right?
I've tried. I've really enjoyed my grandfather and my father are published authors, and I got out, and I was doing a ton of skiing and mountain biking, and I think I was trying to sort of trying to keep my risk, danger, extreme part of my service intact, perhaps at an unhealthy level. And so I knew that I liked to write, and I thought, man, maybe it'd be good to invest in this practice, instead of taking every opportunity to ski off a mountain or something like that. So yeah, it's I'll send it to you also, and we can put it in the show notes. I'd appreciate that. It's all pretty much, generally speaking, is on this topic. So
Okay. And it's called The Transition.
yeah, the
It's a
transition.
blog post and a newsletter. Am I right?
They're all in the same. There's articles, and
Okay.
then there's interviews with folks that I've deemed to have sort of interesting, non-traditional transition paths.
Awesome. Awesome. We'll find a way to put those in the notes so folks
Yeah,
can
man.
follow
Thank you.
along with that Benjamin Davis as we kick this thing off together. Well, I mean, it has been awesome doing this first episode with you of what we're doing here. I hope it makes sense, to the folks out there listening. And we just want to keep having these conversations with people, on this side of the fence, and hopefully opening up opportunities, for veterans, non-veterans, spouses, anybody, kind of in that transition of a career, who may be looking at where to start. So thanks for
Well,
bringing it
thanks for
home
having me.
today, man.
I'm really I'm excited and I'm honored to be part of this project. I think it's gonna be, yeah, I think it was time. I think it's